step away, and we did the mountaintop together, which is Martin Luther King Jr. show. We did what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, about 2
So we decided, well, we can just do it. We'll just do this and we'll make it work.
They already have the relationship and the chemistry and all of that.
Yes. And this is such a beautiful story. I know I told Eric when I was on his radio show that, and I mean, I knew nothing about you, and I'm glad that I do now, but that, and then he had me listen to the interview where I said, oh, well, writing this like from the woman's perspective is incredible. And Eric said, yeah, listen to what Donja said.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just found myself thinking about all of the women in my life. And just thinking about, of course, this is fictionally based off of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King, and just thinking about how much of a force she was and what she played in his life, right? And I just found myself thinking about that age-old and ageist sexist saying, behind every great man is a great woman. So I just found myself thinking about that and just wondering how much of a force was Coretta Scott King and Dr. King's life. And if it wasn't for the time period, what would she have been able to do, right? Like how far would she have been able to kind of excel?
Absolutely. It's so cool to think about. And I love that even when she has her moments of breaking down, she still comes out on top all the time. And
yeah, absolutely. Right. And again, like the force that she has within herself, right? Like how can she get closer to herself, right? Like what does that mean for her to be able to actually exist in her own voice?
Yes. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So and
You're welcome.
yeah. And so like how has the process been?
It's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. It's been unique. It's a way smaller kind of group of people. I mean, the production company, it's the first show that they've put on, and it's the first time that we've both, I mean, we're just co-directors and co-stars. So it's been.
Yeah, I was gagging when I found that out. How was that for y'all?
I would prefer to only be on stage. I assistant directed one show, and I was like, like I know where to go myself. but we worked really well. We kind of just like moved through it with our processes together, and happily like sped through it last night after we ran it, and just kind of had fun, as much fun with it as you can have with it.
I love that. No, because it's for me, considering the themes and everything that happens, right? Like still holding space for the joy, right? Like particularly during that time period, like how do you cultivate and find the joy in these moments, right? And like I think Olivia she's navigating that. She's trying to like figure that out. And so is Charles, right? In this relationship. They're trying to find the joy within themselves and with each other. And what does that look like? Is it even possible, right? And that's the question.
Yeah. And I think it'll be nice for the community too. And I know Eric was talking a little bit about what they've been trying to do. And I have a lot of people who I think they like theater, and they seem pretty, standard classical things. And I am drawn to darker, very deep dramas that have like very relevant topics. So I think that they're going to be surprised, but I think it's going to make a pretty good impact on the people who we call close, but could always be a little bit more aware of things that are going on.
Yeah. Right. And so I'm just interested, like, do y'all have any questions or anything? Is tonight opening, or is it? Tonight is
an invited dress.
Got it.
Yeah. Yep. So tomorrow's opening. Yay. So we'll see.
That's so and how long have y'all been working on it?
It's been about 2 months maybe?
Yeah, 2 months-ish. Yeah. I was in another show that ended up getting indefinitely postponed. So I was like, okay, like let's get started. Here we go.
Right. Like now is the time.
Yes. And we've been able to be in this space. The other companies where we've been, a lot of times that we can't get in the space until a couple of days before the show opens. So it's been nice to have Eric and Linda help us bring the set pieces and everything on. I mean, they brought them all on, and be in this space to work around our home while getting used to the script and the movement and the minimal surrealism that we have, which I love. Yeah. Are you familiar with the mountaintop at all? It's okay.
I am. I love that piece.
our director loved it because of the magical realism. And so in this one, and especially Eric was like, there's like just a touch of surrealism in there and like, let's do it. And I love that about this.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
and
so
that's
subtle.
wow. Like I just as a writer, I naturally gravitate towards like surrealism, absurdism, like all of those things are definitely my jam. And trying to find a way for actually to ring true in a story, right? So like, what does it look like for this woman who exists in a time where there's so many racially motivated bombings happen, right? And like that's just ringing in her head as she's expecting to bring a Black child into this world, right? Like, what does that look like when you constantly are hearing about these bombings happening, right? And like,
Yeah.
how do you navigate that space, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's your advice for young playwrights who are trying to get into the field?
Um, I would say, and so I teach and I work with a lot of young writers, emerging writers, and the number one thing that I say is you have to be yourself, right? Like not, oh, I read this play and I really love what this writer is doing. Let me see if I can do that, right? And it's one thing to be inspired, right? Like we all are inspired, but I think one of the most important things is being true to your voice, even if you don't know what your voice is, even if you just make a mess, right? Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out. Like, I think that's one of the most important things. And another thing that I remember hearing, which is oh so true, is discipline, right? Like, discipline supersedes inspiration, which is to say, like, sometimes we will not be inspired, but there's a deadline that may come up. And what happens when you have this deadline, but you're not inspired, right? Which is to say, discipline will be that thing that will kick in to help you navigate through getting stories told, right? So being true to your voice and being disciplined in your practice of writing. That doesn't mean writing every single day, but if you do decide to do that, what times? Is it in the morning? Is it all day, the afternoon, the evening? Being disciplined in the craft is something that is actually incredibly important.
Definitely.
That
Thank you.
makes sense. Not something I would have thought of either.
Yeah.
Not that
Yeah.
I'm doing anything, but I love that. I get it. Like maintaining consistency and figuring out a
Yeah.
routine almost so that you can get into the flow. I like it.
Yeah, and like that's across any discipline, right? Like just being incredibly disciplined in the
Yeah.
craft of what you're trying to do. Because sometimes you won't be inspired, and like that's just very real. And when you aren't inspired, but you still may have a deadline, right? You still may need to produce pages. What will show up, and the discipline will always show up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you pull your inspiration from, like for just in life?
Where do I pull my inspiration from? That's a really good question. I think it's literally everywhere. I particularly think about just the people in my life and how supportive they are, and how helpful they've been in just my journey of being a human being. And one thing that I hope comes across in all of my work is community. I'm originally from Philly, and I'm here right now
Why you?
um, for a few days workshopping a new piece. And the conversation that we keep having in the room is community. And all of my work, I hope, really talks about and highlights community. So I say all that to say, my inspiration definitely comes from community, right? Whether it's familial, whether it's friends, whether it's even strangers that we have similar lived experiences, community is the biggest thing that I get inspired by. Yeah.
Like that.
That's so important.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And when I think about Fireflies, like I also think about community, right? I think about these two individuals who have been in community with each other for so long and trying to figure out, should we preserve this or do we just let it go?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And like just that back and forth between the two and thinking of these individuals being public figures, right? How should we maintain? Because the world knows who we are, but privately we're having these rifts, right? So how do we preserve for ourselves, our community, and the community at large that looks towards us for hope?
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you write all of Fireflies in sequence, or did it start at maybe the end and then you worked your way back?
No, it literally was all straight through. I will say Fireflies is a part of a trilogy that explores queer love during pivotal moments of Black history. And so Fireflies is the second part in the trilogy, obviously taking place during the Civil Rights Movement. And out of the 3 plays, Fireflies was actually the hardest to write. And it was the hardest because I seldom do this, but I ended up doing it when I was writing Fireflies, which is hold interviews and do research before I start to write. Normally I would just write and then do the research after, but I was able to talk to my grandma and my great grandma before writing because they were alive during that time. And when I started to write, all I could think about was what my grandma and what my great grandma said. I wasn't thinking about Charles. I wasn't thinking about Olivia. I was like, I remember what these 2 women said. I have to make sure I get it right for them. And I got to a point I said, I love my mom. I love Nana. I cannot think about them anymore. I have to think about Charles and Olivia. And once I got like a first draft, a second draft, then I went back to the conversation to like, okay, now how can I make it more accurate based off the things that I was told? So that's why Fireflies was the hardest. I kept thinking about these conversations and I wasn't thinking about Olivia and Charles in the beginning.
Wow.
Interesting.
But yeah.
That's a cool thing about.
That's super awesome.
Go
Hey,
ahead.
well, Donja, thank you so much. I gotta let these guys do a little prep now because we're gonna go lights down in a second. But one of the things about these 2 directing it that I think made this so kind of like a perfect experiment was that it's a great story, but you wrote 2 people. And then these 2 just like when they're doing their blocking and stuff, they're not thinking about how do we convey the story. They're just thinking about being this person. And it's really been such a joy just to watch them. And the decisions that they make are the decisions Olivia and Charles would make, not Kimmy and Cedric. And that's because you put those voices in them. It's just beautiful. So thank you so much.
Hats off to y'all. Acting and co-directing. Love it. Get your life. I love it. I love it. Congratulations and hats off to y'all. I have an amazing invited dress.
Okay, thank you so much.
For writing.
Thank you.
Congratulations, y'all. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right.